My sister requested the use of my beach house for her wedding day, then secretly attempted to steal it. When I caught her rummaging through my office on her wedding night, I knew she had crossed a line. Thus, I imparted a lesson she'll never forget. I, 29M, own a quaint beach house that I inherited from my grandfather a few years prior. It possesses this relaxed vibe, situated right on the sand with a breathtaking view of the ocean. My grandfather essentially constructed it with his own hands decades ago. Even though it's not a mansion, it has always felt like a special place. Growing up, our family would venture there for numerous vacations, celebrations, or whenever we needed an escape from the city. When he passed, he bequeathed the property to me. I've been diligently taking care of it, settling the bills, repairing what requires mending, and permitting relatives to stay there, whenever they ask politely, and adhere to some basic rules. My younger sister, who is 2 years my junior, has always been somewhat dramatic. She's the baby of the family, which implies my parents, particularly my mom, have always been a little more lenient with her. She knows how to get what she desires. If you decline, she throws a tantrum or guilts you until you relent. I've endeavored to disregard her theatrics for most of my life, but recently, things escalated from mildly irritating to utterly ridiculous. A few months ago she got engaged. She and her fiancé commenced planning a wedding and required a venue. One day, she inquired if she could host her ceremony and reception at my beach house. Honestly, I was initially excited. I thought it would be a meaningful way to honor our grandfather's memory. And I appreciated the notion of her commemorating such a significant moment, in a place that holds considerable value for our family. She informed me it would be a small gathering, perhaps 40 or 50 people, and pledged she'd manage all the details, such as tents, chairs, catering, decor, and so forth. I perceived no reason to decline. However, then I began hearing rumors from various relatives. Maya called me one afternoon, saying, "Hey, is it true your sister is moving into your beach house after the wedding? I heard she plans to reside there permanently." That caught me off guard. She had never mentioned that to me. When I confronted her, she acted as if it were inconsequential, stating, "Oh, we might stay there for a bit until we find a house to buy." I attempted to be reasonable. I told her, "If you need a place for a short time, we can discuss it, but I'm the one who covers all the expenses here. So let's determine how that'll work." She became snappy and said I was being selfish, that the beach house belonged to our whole family, because it was our grandfather's. Subsequently, I received word from more relatives that my sister was boasting about how she was going to renovate and decorate her new home. People were inquiring if I'd sold it to her, or signed some kind of transfer. I informed everyone I hadn't, but apparently, she was disseminating her own version of the story. When my dad heard about this, he gave me a call. Basically advising me to keep a close watch on things, because she was running around telling people that our grandfather had always intended the beach house for her when she tied the knot. I was annoyed, but I also thought maybe it was just pre-wedding excitement, and she'd calm down. However, then one night while I was at the beach house tidying up before her big day, I discovered these strange documents on my kitchen table. They resembled some homemade attempt at a property transfer form, along with a typed letter that claimed Grandpa had verbally promised the place to my sister. It even had a fake date on it, trying to show I'd supposedly agreed to transfer ownership. Honestly, it was such a half-baked forgery that it initially made me laugh, until I realized how insane this was. I called her immediately, and inquired what was going on. She first feigned ignorance, then admitted she made some papers, just in case we needed something formal. I told her to stop messing around with legal documents, or I'd take serious action. She blew up at me, calling me a heartless brother who wouldn't support her. We had a nasty argument. Afterward, I called a lawyer friend who said these fake papers were worthless, but advised me to keep them as evidence if she attempted anything else. Despite all this, I allowed the wedding to proceed. I didn't want to be the jerk who canceled everything at the last minute, and ruined the day for a bunch of relatives traveling from afar, so I kept quiet but stayed on high alert. I also disclosed everything to my father. He'd been mostly neutral before, but when he heard about the forged documents, he was on my side. My mom was really torn. She loves us both, but she sometimes coddles my sister, so she asked me to please not create a massive scene. A few weeks before the wedding, my sister and her fiancé visited with their planners and vendors to set up. I noticed her fiancé kept asking me questions like, "Do you think you'd ever sell this place?" Or, "How much is the property tax?" It felt weird, like they were fishing for some angle. But I shrugged it off. I still harbored some hope that once the wedding passed, they'd let go of the dream of owning my house, and focus on their married life somewhere else. On the actual wedding day, the tension was palpable. Relatives arrived early to set up. I tried to be chill and stay out of her way. She was in bridezilla mode, micromanaging everyone, yelling about the positioning of the chairs, the flowers not being white enough, just being generally exhausting. The ceremony was set for sunset, which should have been beautiful, and in a way it was. She walked down the makeshift aisle on the sand. She and her fiancé exchanged vows. Everyone cheered. For about 15 minutes, it felt like a normal wedding, but then came the reception, which took place under a tent on the beach. During her thank you speech, she basically announced to everyone that she and her spouse would be making the beach house their forever home, and that I'd agreed to hand it over. I was stunned. A few guests glanced at me with raised eyebrows. My father's face was stone cold. My mother looked like she wanted to vanish. A couple of uncles just shook their heads, probably guessing there was about to be some big drama. After her speech, folks started coming up and asking if it was true. I told them no, she was making it up. This turned the crowd into a swirl of confusion. People whispered, trying to figure out who was lying. I walked right over to her quietly, so I wouldn't interrupt the music, and asked what she was doing. She basically said, "Don't ruin my day, man. You barely use this place, just let me have it." I told her she was crossing a line. She called me selfish again and stormed off. The rest of the evening, I hovered near the house, watching to make sure nobody was trying to snoop around. Sure enough, my friend who I'd hired to keep an eye on things texted me, saying my sister and her fiancé were in my office rummaging around. I ran in there and found them going through my locked file cabinet. I demanded to know what they were doing. They tried to play it off like they were looking for some sentimental letter from Grandpa. I called them out for lying. The fiancé told me to chill out and stop causing a scene. I told them both to get out before I called the cops. She started crying and said I was ruining her wedding night. I wasn't having it. I told them to leave and lock the office door behind them. Word traveled fast around the party that something had gone down inside the house. Guests sensed the awkward energy. My sister was by the bar, crying and telling people I was a control freak who was obsessed with keeping her from our grandfather's true wish. Some relatives tried to calm her while others came to me asking for the real story. I was honest, she's been forging documents and pretending I handed over the house to her. I'm done with her nonsense. Eventually, my dad came by and said, "This is nuts, but we can't let them keep doing this. Let's end the party if it escalates." I nodded. My mother hovered nearby, looking upset, probably hoping it would all blow over, but by that point I was set on shutting this down. I told my sister, right in front of a bunch of folks, that if she kept claiming any right to my property, I'd kick everyone out immediately, and talk to the authorities about the forgery. She tried to flip it back on me, saying I was threatening her on her wedding day. I basically told her, "You brought this on yourself. You won't get away with lying about who owns this place." She went quiet. Her new spouse started telling her to let it go for the night, and focus on enjoying the reception. She sniffed and stomped off, and the party limped along for another hour or two, but the vibe was terrible. People were dancing awkwardly, or just milling around, clearly feeling weird about the drama. By around 10 p.m. I told the DJ to wrap up. Normally, a wedding reception might go later, but I was over it. I wanted everyone gone. Guests started trickling out, giving me apologetic looks or pats on the shoulder. Some even thanked me for letting them come despite the fiasco. My sister and her spouse were among the last to leave. She glared at me one final time, muttered something I couldn't catch, and then they drove off. I locked up, took a deep breath, and felt a wave of relief. At least the wedding was done.